using the pen tool in InDesign. So in InDesign, we have a tool called the pen tool. The pen tool is located in the vector or drawing components of the toolbar. So with the pen tool, we can create paths, either straight paths or curved paths. And what we'll do is look at how we can do each one of these in a minute. Okay? So the elements of a path that we have, and I'm going to navigate to my direct selection tool. Your selection tool or your direct selection tool will allow you to see the components of a set path. So when I'm looking at a path, I see some endpoints. Those are called my anchor points. Every time I click with the pen tool, I place an anchor point. Now this anchor point can either be a corner point, it can be a smooth point, as we see right here, or it can just be a corner, which would be a kind of similar to the corner point. The segments are the areas that fall in between my anchor points, and you automatically get that segment when you click. When we have a smooth curve here, or smooth, we call it a Bezier curve, we'll also get our control handles that you see right here. So an important thing to distinguish is that an anchor point is square and a handle has a circle. Those are two important so you don't get mixed up by accidentally selecting the wrong thing. We also have what we would call a closed path and an open path. Now if I were to just use a tool that we have, say the ellipse tool, and draw a circle, I have a closed path because it's continuous. My end point is my beginning point. There's no opening. If I were to navigate to my pen tool and click and drag to create something, this now is an open path. My end point and my beginning point are not the same. They are not connected. Okay, let's select everything here and delete and start with a fresh new page. Go to my pen tool and let's start by drawing straight segments with the pen tool. To draw a straight line segment, basically you're going to click with the pen tool, let up on the mouse, move to another location, click again, and now you have a straight line segment. Okay, if I continue to click, what I'll get are corner points. Corner points are basically anchor points that create a corner between two line segments. There's an abrupt change in direction. So here we have a bunch of straight line segments with corner points. Now what if I go to my selection tool and I deselect this path and I realize I need to continue drawing on it? So to continue to reconnect, basically, I need to click on my path. When I navigate to my pen tool, you'll now see that I have filled in anchor points. It's a little difficult to see, but you can see those little boxes there. If I navigate over one of the points, the end point or the beginning point, watch my cursor. I now have slanted, a diagonal line appears beside my pen tool icon. This tells me that now if I click, I'm able to continue drawing and add to this path. So that's how we can reconnect a path. Now how about adding anchor points? So again, with the pen tool active, I basically can click in the middle of a line segment and I will add a point. So InDesign is smart in that it knows you have the pen tool, it knows you have a path selected. By clicking, I'm adding more anchor points to this specific path. Now we know that perfection is not necessary when we draw in InDesign, and that is because I have my direct selection tool and I can basically rearrange, move, reposition any anchor point or line segment with this direct selection tool. So remember, the selection tool selects an entire object. Direct selection tool selects a part or a part of an entire object. So here's where I can click outside, and I always want to sort of deselect. So typically I deselect by clicking in the middle of nowhere to deselect everything. Then I'm going to go with my direct selection tool and click on the path. And what you'll see is that this is highlighted blue and this is hollow. So the anchor points that are not selected appear hollow. The one that I have targeted or that is selected will fill in blue, and that allows me to move this to a different location. So all of these can be tweaked along the same lines. If I go back to the pen tool, like I said, I can add anchor points. I can do the same thing by deleting them. By going over top of an existing anchor point, I get a minus sign next to my pen tool indicating that I'm ready to delete that point. So you can see how easy that is to delete things and add. So editing is something that you do, you're just kind of know that you will be going back and doing some tweaking and editing. You don't do it absolute perfect the first time. I'm going to go ahead and select everything here using my selection and pressing delete to deselect to get rid of everything. Now let's draw using curved line segments with the pen tool. So the key here when we draw curved lines is to use the fewest number of points to define a path. Because we want to have more control. And you want to limit the length of the control handles to about 1/3 of the curve. And you'll see this when I use the pen tool, I click now and drag. And I'm dragging out that control handle. And this is where I'm dragging it from the anchor point to the end, about 1/3 of the total distance I think my curve will be. You can also use your shift key to make this be straight in a vertical, 45-degree, or horizontal. And you always drag in the direction the curve is going to go. So if I go over here now and drag down, I'm dragging in the direction that my curve is going to go. And you can see my smart guides are trying to line things up for me to make this absolutely smooth. So when I have this, I now have these smooth points that have these handles. They all, if I click on my direct selection tool to edit, they all have two and they work in tandem. So if I move one way, the other moves also. Okay? And this really determines the arc, basically how steep your curve will be and the length of it. So if I drag this to be longer, you can see my curve is going to be longer. Okay? Now, if I wanted to, with the pen tool, I can hold down my Alt key and I can break this. And when I break it, basically, I've moved it from being a smooth point to now being a corner point. Okay? And I'm doing that with this direction handle. Remember, the direction handles have circles on the ends. When I elongate them, I make the curve either longer or shorter. And so those are my great editing tools with these Bezier curves, as we call them. All right, I'm going to again start over from scratch and show you again dragging. So when I use this pen and drag, I'm making curve. And at this point, I can also hold down my Alt key. I just held my Alt key down, and I'm able to break my curve. And I'm going to drag again. Now, if I've decided that I need to have this broke at a different time, I can go back with my pen tool and hold the Alt key, or I do have this convert. And you notice that I get the caret icon because that is shows me that this is the convert. If you see that icon and if you watch what happens to my cursor, it does the same little caret is what we call it. All right, so if I were to hold down and just click on a point, I now take it to being a corner point. If I click and drag, holding the Alt key with my pen tool, I can drag out handles. So Alt key with the pen tool allows me to convert either from a corner to a smooth point. So again, practice with the pen tool. This is how you really will achieve perfection, is by practicing, understanding how it works. If you have a drawing tablet with a stylus, start right away working with that as your tool, because you'll be much more efficient as you develop with this tool in InDesign.